Hey.
Yeah, we're officially live now.
Okay.
So did you finish your chips, or do you still want to?
Oh, I popped a whole bag of popcorn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought we were just on the rec yard. Luckily, I can have food now.
Right? Where
Like,
are
I
the
thought
burritos?
we were just hanging out, making points.
So, welcome everybody to On the Rec Yard this evening. Mandi has joined me, and most of you know Mandi, so it should be a lively, interesting conversation. We will try desperately not to use names as we tell.
Note that. I'm glad you said that.
And if a name gets slipped in there, I'm sorry. Forgive me, but we were in the heat of the moment.
Oh yeah, totally. And forgive me, because I'll probably forget that I said it when I said it.
Because we'll get to talking like it's just me and her, and then we'll forget that we're live in front of the entire world and have said something inappropriate. There's Alexa. Hey, Alexa. I'm going to give people a few more minutes to get on before we really start talking. Do you like the music?
I do. It's just setting the mood.
For some reason, it's called Feeding the Ducks. Would you be listening to this while you were feeding ducks?
Hold on, let me see if I can vibe with it.
You're throwing out the little pieces of bread.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's how I would feel about that.
Well, you look beautiful as usual.
Because you're blinded by love too.
I'm a sucker for beautiful women. It's been my downfall my whole life. We had some problems with our lighting, so this is not Mandi's usual color. So if anybody's curious,
this is actually darker, so I'm going to represent it, okay?
So as we get started this evening, I had used a picture that I didn't know if it was appropriate or not, but I thought it was kind of interesting and funny, right? Kind of highlights our friendship, and it kind of highlights what we're going to talk about. And that's that picture that we took when we were at the Houston Horror Movie Festival, and Michael Myers had us. I think he had you in a headlock. I'm not sure, but he had both.
I always
of us.
end up in those.
Right. And he's got his big butcher knife, and we look like shit's about to go down. But,
with smiles on our faces.
We were happy.
That's about how it goes, though.
And in talking about coping skills in prison while you're incarcerated, I just found it kind of a fitting picture. And we both look super cute, but kind of a foreshadowing of talking about how we cope with stressful things on the inside. So before we dig into that, I just want to kind of give people a little bit of a background of how we know each other. Would you like to tell people how we met, how we know each other?
Do you really want my version? I thought we were being appropriate here. Let's let you tell it. I want to hear your perspective.
Hold on, I take that back. Let me explain how me and Mandi met. I don't know. Well, I don't know if we can tell the story, actually.
Next question.
But we did, we lived in the same dorm, and we became very good friends. And she was more than willing, as a new friend, as a kindred spirit, to help me try to antagonize the chaplain because he refused. He was a very difficult man, and unless your religion was his, he treated you very badly, and I just got really sick of it. So I changed my religion to Unitarian Universalist because I wanted us to have inmate-led services. And
what's funny is I totally was like, what? But that did happen.
Yeah, you're like, wait a minute, I forgot all about it. Yeah, so you had to have at least 6 members to hold services. And so I had to find 5 other people to go along with me on this, and we had to change our religions. And Mandi was so gracious, and she said, "Oh yeah, I'm for it. Like, let's do it. Sounds interesting. If it's anything to fuck with them, let's do it." And it's funny because BF Diane always teases me and says, "Remember that time you tried to start a cult with all the prettiest girls on the unit?" I said, that is not what happened. I can't help it that I rounded up all the attractive women. I can't help that. But anyway, that was the start of our hijinks. So there's a little bit more of a backstory, but like Mandi said, it's kind of not.
We're gonna go with that one.
We're gonna go with this one for now.
Yeah.
So let's talk about. Let me turn as Maggie says. This is, as always, my Jamba Juice music. She says that's the music you hear when you go into the smoothie place. So, talking about coping skills while you're in custody, and what are coping skills? Coping skills are behaviors or emotions. That when you face triggers and difficult, stressful experiences, that you rely on these methods of coping. So, Mandi, we were at Mountain View. We did our time there. Well, you went some other places towards the end, but
too. Mountain View was like my third stop.
Yeah, that's right. You were at Hobby, Lane Murray,
Lane Murray,
and Crane. Didn't you go to Crane?
I went to Crane. I hit all of them. I hit every unit.
Make sure before you leave, you just tap bases with all of them.
Yeah, just making sure everybody knows my name.
Right. So, talk to us a little bit about perhaps maybe the difference between when you first got locked up and then later when you left. What were the ways that you coped with stressful things? Let's use the example of being away from your family and your kids, because that is a painful emotional trigger. That's a pain that people on the outside really, really can't understand. So that's something very heavy that you had to deal with. So how did you survive and function? How did you cope with that?
So I was in county and actually it's my story's a little crazy, but whatever. All of ours is whatever. So when I was in county and I actually realized that I was going to have to stay because I had my appeal after my trial, and I knew that I was going to go to prison. Turning myself in was really hard, and dealing with that day was really hard. And it's like at first you kind of just want to be strong. You want to be like, I'm okay. I can do this. If I have to do it, I'm going to be okay. But I think that it was still so surreal that I just didn't believe it. So it was like, okay, the next day will be better, or the next day it might not be, something might change. I just couldn't accept it. I had a really hard time with actually accepting the fact that I was about to have to do all this time. And, when I think I was maybe a week into my county time, this girl gave me this book, and she was like, "Oh, you need to read this book." And she was like, "It's about this guy who was in a car accident," and she goes into it, and it totally triggered me. I had a whole panic attack. I literally hyperventilated and just thought I was going to pass out. I didn't know what was going on. And I just started crying. It was just uncontrollable. And they have to call the officers in county or whatever. And we go to medical, and right away they put me on some type of psych medicine. Mm-hmm. I think it was Zoloft or something like that. So at first, when I went to county, that was kind of how I coped, is I would just take my medicine and go to sleep. So I really wasn't actually dealing with anything. I was just doing time, just letting the time pass. Mm-hmm. When I got transferred to Plain State and take I was more modest. I didn't the whole stripping, everything would just stress me out. It was humiliating to me. It was demeaning to me. It psychologically was just messing up my whole thought process on how I was. Like it just made me have to rethink and accept what I was going to have to do. And so then got like in this mentality where I was like, okay, if I have to do it, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it with my head held high, and I'm going to do it to present myself as well as I can, because no one's going to see me be weak. Because something that like my mom always bestowed in my head is like, you got to be strong. You got to be strong. You got to be strong. But at night, I would cry all the time. I would cry all the time at night. And I remember my first trip to SEG. I thought my mom has claustrophobia. In my head, I thought I had claustrophobia. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And so I would be on and off the psych medicines because I didn't like the way they made me feel, because I do like to feel. But there were times like if I had a visit with my kids, every time I would go into my visit, it was like I got to escape. And then when I came back, it was like I had to get in this prison mode. Like I literally had to just in my head. Like it was crazy though, because after every visit, I'd have to go take a nap. Like I was so emotionally drained and emotionally exhausted for the fact that I just had to say goodbye again. Like, and I just had to let them go. Like I remember the hardest time was when I was at Plain. Like my daughter was a little less than 2 years. I might start crying. And we were in a visit. And I remember the first time when I was in prison that I got to put her to sleep. Like she fell asleep on me. And I remember when the time came up, like it was like they had to take her from me, right? But it wasn't so much that I knew I had to give her to them. It was the warmth of her body leaving mine that just, I think I was not good for like 3 or more days. Like that, I just wasn't. Thank God I didn't. I think I quit going to work. I think I didn't do anything. Like I was just like done. Thank God I pulled chain. Didn't get a case.
Yeah.
But as time went on, it almost became mechanical. Like I tried to just stay under the radar at first, and I wanted to just be left alone, and I just wanted to do my time. I would interact with, I was going to college, I was doing school, like I was doing what I could to better myself in there. I took parenting classes. I did, like I was applying myself to try to at least get the most out of this situation until I had a lot of stressors at home. So when I would get phone calls from home for things that I couldn't control, or like my then husband was doing whatever the hell he wanted to do, and like they were telling me all the stuff that was going on that I couldn't control, or that my son's dad was taking me to court. Like it was just adding on and on and on, all the things that you just had to accept. And it was just like you're in prison mode and you just have to just accept it. Like you just have to eat it. It's almost like you're just what is it like? It's like you're choking, but you're choking with emotion, and you can't really like ever swallow it or spit it up because you have to just hold it because there's nothing you can do. And one of my main outlets for my stress was exercise. Like I totally did this religion thing. I totally was spiritual. I definitely like meditated and prayed, and like I was always a God girl. Like even when I wasn't doing godly things, I was a God girl. Okay. And so I really think that was probably the baseline of how I survived, meant like just as far as coping. But different circumstances in my stay, I adapted to different coping skills. I will say in the end, my best coping skill was, honestly, I just had to stop caring so much. I had to literally stop. Like I literally had to turn myself inside out from caring to like wanting to fix everything and care about everybody and like be there for everybody. Like I literally had to stop doing that. Like and the only thing that would keep me like kind of balanced is my visits from my family. Like as much torture as they were, like emotionally, they would check me back into the like, Mandi, like you don't have to be like that. Like you don't have to be like that, Like if I went too long without seeing my kids, baby, I was getting a case.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely, and that's an important point that I really want to kind of highlight is this, like you said, like the intensity of what you're having to deal with and not having control over it, and that feeling of like you said, that was perfectly described, like the warmth of your child leaving your body at that visit, and you do healthy things, right? You do your best to cope in a healthy way, like. And I want to stress the importance of visitation, right? Visitation, being able to exercise, being able to have spiritual outlets. And, we've seen through COVID that a lot of times the girls in Gatesville have not been allowed to do any of that. And we've seen their mental health completely deteriorate very quickly. But it is important what you said is that you had to stop caring. And so they send us to a place to rehabilitate us, to punish us, but rehabilitate us, right? And they send us somewhere where the way that we survive ultimately is to stop caring. Like at some point, the pain is that strong that I just click off. I don't feel anything. And the only way to revive that was, like you said, being in touch with your kids and your loved one. And I totally agree with you, because when I would go see my parents or my friends that would visit, it's like in that moment I could be human and alive and feel. But the second they left, the pain was so intense. I would go in and take a nap every time.
But what's so crazy is like everyone was going through it, but nobody had compassion. Like it was like you had to walk in and this one girl could be mad at you because you did this or you looked at someone or you smiled at someone and you're automatically sad as hell because you just had to leave your kids, but you have to be ready for a fight if the opportunity happens. Or you know what I mean? Like It's like you literally have no time to actually process all of your emotions because you're constantly have heightened senses and heightened emotions to where and that's what you bring home. Like that's what you bring home. You're constantly like, what, who, when, why, and I think I'm about to get off topic. So let's circle back.
That's okay. I'm going to make a note of it. We'll circle back.
Yeah. I'm flashing.
That's okay. You can flash here. I flash all the time on my stuff. I just use anonymous names, and all my friends know who I'm talking about. But you're right, because then when you come home, you bring those ways of coping. I brought home the healthy ways of coping. Like today, when I'm feeling overwhelmed or stressed out, I reach out to Diane. I'll reach out to you. I'll reach out to Alexa and just say, oh, girl, I'm having a mental health problem right now. I start pacing. I do my meditation. I get really deep into meditation and prayer because that was a very positive, healthy outlet for me. But I also, like you said, brought home that coping skill and that coping mechanism that was not so healthy, which is to completely compartmentalize something and just decide I'm not going to care anymore. And not in the way that self-help and therapists say, like, just learn to let go and be. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking complete emotional. I hate to use the word apathy, but I don't feel anything. Like I'm looking at you and I feel nothing because I am so overwhelmed. And that prison taught me that when I get overwhelmed, to compartmentalize it and just not care about it anymore.
Well, it's kind of like disassociation. Like
right. Maybe that's the perfect word.
Yeah, that's how I kind of, and I have to catch myself when I do it because like I do care and I do care about people and I do care about like certain things. But like for my kids, for an example, like I love my kids. Anyone who knew me in prison, anyone who knows me knows I love my kids. Okay. But there are times where one in particular, one of my kids' fathers makes my life really hard, really, really hard, to the point where I have to literally like disassociate that I love her so much because I know he uses her to hurt me. Like I literally have to like tell myself like, Mandi, you know you love her, you know you would give the word for her, you know that, she knows that, but I have to cut this, I have to stop caring about this right now.
Yeah.
Because if I don't, I will react and I'm not there no more. I think that was probably one of the most breakthrough experiences when I learned that I was an emotional reactor and I needed to learn how to respond to things because I can be dramatic all day, like I like that. That's my personality, but I don't want to be not taken serious when I actually do have feelings. Like my feelings are valid.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've learned to establish and like address.
I want to highlight something that Jerry just said, and this is pretty powerful, exactly what we're talking about. And Miss Jerry did 30 years. She said, when my mother died, I just pretended she didn't. I mean, that's what we're talking about in the level of emotional pain of incarceration, and especially, and I don't mean to negate men's experience. I just feel like there's a certain type of pain that comes from being a mother, from being a wife and a sister and a daughter, that you just completely, like you said, you just dissociate from it. Like Jerry just
What's
said,
so
I
hard
just
though
pretended like
is,
she wasn't.
but what's so hard is like when we do that inside, like when we do that where we disassociate or we don't want to care, because 9 out of 10 times, and it's so hard because then when you do care, you get separated by the people that you care about, or you get like you can't even care because when you care, that's a weapon they use against you.
Yes.
And then on top of that, we have to deal with it when we get home. Like when her mom, she might have been able to pretend it in prison. Like I might have been able to like be like, okay, I can't do anything about it now. I don't have to see it. I don't have to witness it. I don't have to deal with it. And now it's like, especially when I first got home, like, oh my God, so many people's emotions that you care about, but you just didn't know how to handle your own emotions, let alone their emotions. Like that was kind of traumatizing.
Right, because it's like, well, I mean, you can only go so long before there comes a moment that you do have to deal with it. And it's like, you spent so many years just coping with it in terms of avoidance or denial. Because that's what happened to you when you first went to jail. That was the first that was the first part of the process in dissociation, is denial. And I did it too. The second time I got arrested, girl, I'm serious. It was a year. I refused to buy a hot pot, a radio, or a fan. I said, because I'm not here. I'm not here. And it was like, Jennifer, at some point, you're going to have to accept that you're here. Because to me, being in denial was, I don't need those things because I don't really exist here. And it was a hard thing to even reach that level of acceptance, to be able to, make a life there, because that's another way of coping. Like you mentioned earlier, routine, going to school, going to classes, and living in our little culture there, making our friends and our relationships. And that made it tolerable as well.
But what's so crazy is like when I think about it, everything was like an illusion, because something that prison taught me that I hold that so tight is everybody is replaceable. You can be working your ass off at a job in prison. You can be doing your best. You can be walking that straight line, and in an instant, you can get crossed out. You can get UT'd. And guess what? The world will go on. When I went to prison, I thought, oh, how are they going to survive without me? My kids need me. Like my family needs me. And guess what? They don't. Like, and that reality, it's almost like it's like, I guess you almost have to grieve for the life you used to have.
Yeah.
Like you literally go through the process of grief without knowing you're doing it, because you go through the anger, you go through the denial, you go through the depression, and then eventually you just accept it. And then you go through the whole process again when you come home.
Yes, exactly.
And I don't think people I think that's something that should be taught in cognitive class or like in reentry class, is like, hey, look, you grieved and you accepted your circumstances to be here and survive mentally and physically. You know what I mean? Like you adapted to your surroundings, because that's what we do as humans. We try to survive and we're going to adapt. And then when we go home, it's like, okay, well, we had a life for 7 years that doesn't exist anymore. Just like we had a life for 21 years that doesn't exist anymore. And it's, you literally have to grieve that life and then grieve your second life.
And you are totally explaining something that I've told people for years. And actually me and Alexa were talking about that earlier today, in terms of this needs to be taught in reentry to families, to people who are getting out. It's that I had to grieve when I was 15. I had to grieve the loss of my family and what had happened, and I'm acclimating to prison. And then when I left, and it was just as sudden as I went in the system, it was just as sudden as I was jerked out of it. And I had to grieve the women and the family and the connections that I created
And you know
there.
what's so crazy is people don't get that. Like I left people I love, I care about in prison, knowing what their circumstances are, knowing what they're going through, knowing how much it sucks and how like I know that. Like I sometimes have to disassociate with that because it makes me feel so guilty with the already guilt that I have that I'm just like, you just can't win. It's like you just are constantly in this mental battle where you're just like, okay, well, what can I do to help cope? I exercise, I meditate, I listen to music, I talk to friends. You know what I mean? Like, and you have to find what works for you too, because there's some things that people do and I'm just like, nah, that would not, that would stress me out. Like, I'm not trying to do that. Like people come home and get in relationships. That's a good example because I've heard you talk about that before. Is that people come home and get in relationships because that becomes that's what they're used to, and that's how they create schedules. That's how they create consistency, right? Every relationship I've been in has been like the worst experience of my life. Like, oh my God, that's like the scariest thing for me. So people are like, oh, you should date, you should get in a relationship. That is so stressful. Like, it's so stressful to me. It's such a like, oh my God, the next person that I date, they better marry me because actually, you know what? That don't even mean that we're going to stay together forever. So I don't know. Like,
Right. Yeah, because we had talked about that a couple of weeks ago about, you know, one of the hugest struggles that I think that we as women especially face when we get out is because all we know to cope is to get into a relationship. And it's certainly as a coping skill on the inside.
that's what I'm saying. I don't think people realize that they're doing that.
Right. Like I mean, you know, we say, well, you know, they have a girlfriend or something because they're passing the time and it's something to do or whatever. But I mean, it did meet a deep psychological need for connection and affection or whatever. But, you know, that was a coping skill that people utilize.
No, for sure. It goes back to the Franklin reality model. You have the need to feel loved, important. You know what I mean? Like they were teaching us what we needed, but they weren't providing what we needed.
Right. No, that's excellent.
Like, I mean, yeah, we're going to go do this and we're going to go do that and we're going to try to make ourselves feel good, but it's because our needs are not being met. And that's what people do out here too. Like when they come home, like, yeah, they're going to make decisions. People do it now. They've never been to prison. Like they don't know the fundamentals of themselves and they just use different toxic or self-sabotaging, damaging things to.
So do you think the things that you learned through prison as painful as it was, do you think that has actually, I know for me, it's made me more introspective and I may not get it right all the time. You know that I'm not well sometimes, but I do give me a minute and I can step back. I've not reacted.
Longer than a minute, but we're going to give you a long minute.
Well,
we're going to give you a minute like she's been locked up for a minute.
Let me say, not that I haven't reacted, like you said, being emotionally reactive, because that's what's gotten me in trouble repeatedly through my life is that emotional reactivity. I think my emotional reactivity is not as bad as what it was that led me to prison, but I certainly still need to work on that. But I'm able at least now to not do the severe emotional reaction and at least step back for a while and recognize later, oh, whoa, hey, I need to call Mandi or I need to call Diane or I need to do those positive coping skills. So do you feel like it's made you more introspective in a good way?
Well, I will tell you that it's made me count the cost. Because even in prison, when I made a decision, like especially after that one incident that sent me down the first time, okay, after that, because I didn't think I was gonna be able to go through that. I thought that was me. That was gonna be like, that was when I was gonna break. Okay. And I didn't. And that kind of like showed me a new reality that I would be able to survive. I could adapt and I can survive any circumstance. Okay. Yeah. But with that, it also taught me that Oh my God, I totally just forgot what I was talking about.
It taught you
What
that
did
you
you
can.
just say?
I said you were saying it taught you that you can
Oh,
survive.
coping skills. Right. Survive.
There's that
Right.
dissociation. You just did it right.
Dude, I totally flashed on it.
Me
Like I was
too.
just like, I don't even want to think about this. Like
I'll just stare off and be like, "What?
that
I
is
just
exactly because
disappeared."
like I was trying to go back to that memory of like how I felt because you said something that triggered it. And I was like, oh, hold on. Like, and then it was like I just let it go.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you said something about how you what did you say right before I started talking?
Um, do you feel like this has made you more
Oh, yes,
introspective?
that's what you said. I was like, dang. Okay. It made me realize that I can count the cost now.
Hmm.
Like, is it worth it to me? Like, I don't know if you remember that incident in front of the chow hall that I did. Like, I had
Yeah.
counted that cost. Like,
Yeah.
I knew what the consequences could be, what the consequences were, and I was like, all right, bet.
Hmm.
And now out here, I count the same cost and nothing is worth it. Like, is it worth it for me to give them an emotional reaction? Is it worth it for me to respond to that? When I first came home, it was really hard because I had a lot of triggers and I was still adapting and having to like go through the process of accepting and like getting more stable, you know, and it was harder. And I still would emotionally react to my daughter's dad because he is a trigger for me because he's part of my trauma.
Hmm.
But besides him, and then actually my whole family, like it was really hard for me not to react because I cared too much and I
Hmm.
didn't know how to make everybody happy. But now I've learned that when someone makes me mad or like if something happens, like is it even worth it? Like is it even worth me being upset about? I mean, I have to convince myself and I have to talk to like five people and like get their perspective and make sure that I'm not going to overreact and like, you know, talk through it. But eventually I'm like, all right, I'm just going to chill.
Well, that's a great point, right? It's being able to, because I was terrible at it. It was react first and think about it later. I'll, no concept of consequence, and not because I didn't care about the consequence. It was because I was so intense and deeply emotional, that I couldn't. It's like I couldn't even think far enough. And now at least, like I said, I still emotionally react to things, but give me some time to cool off and think about it. And I'm like, but the worst things, I have been able to push through and think about the consequences. Like, wait a minute, like what would be the outcome of this? Like, am I willing uh, to pay the cost for this particular reaction, or looking at all the consequences down the road? And then here's the thing, Mandy. I do that well in prison. Now there was one or two moments
Oh yeah,
that
no, you
I,
you
I
you
almost
had
lost it.
that prison.
But because I refused to give TDCJ and those officers a reaction, it didn't care what emotional pain I was going through. I just would let it burn and I would channel it through something else because I refused to give them a reaction. And I had a warden at Henley during some of my treatment stuff. She looked at my she looked at my disciplinary record and she says, "In almost 20 years, you've had two minor cases." She said, I don't even, how do you explain that? I said, well, I mean, I wanted to go home and I just never found a reason to do anything. Not that I didn't do stuff, but like the major things. And she goes, so let me get this straight. You know how to behave and do well when people are looking, but when nobody's looking, like when you're free, you don't. So this is an act. And I was like, no, it's not an act. She goes, well, then explain it because I don't understand. And I'll never forget that because it was like, oh my God, she's kind of right. Like, I have
No,
a
but
problem when on the outside, because I don't feel the immediate impact of consequence like you would on the inside. And because, like you said, I'll be damned if I give TDCJ a reaction.
I don't even think like I don't want it to be like, oh, I don't react because I don't want to go to prison because
Hmm.
it's not
Hmm.
it's sadly enough as much as I hate prison and like it emotionally damaged me, I understand why people go. Like I understand why people go back. Because you can be John Doe on the street, not even able to eat with no teeth, go to prison, shave your hair and be a king to somebody. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
some people that's their lifestyle and that's what
Hmm.
they want, okay? But out here, when I say consequences, like it's not even just consequences of prison, it's consequences of after you react, you have to deal with the repercussions and the emotions of other people you affect. And then you have more on your plate that you have to deal with that you really could have just kind of processed through it and been like, you know what, I'm just going to deal with this on my own and not bring everybody in it. And now I can squash it or like let it go. It makes it easier to like process. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes, and I do want to like make a huge point here, like with what you said, is that, and this is something I'm glad you said it, and it's kind of like rapping me on the knuckles a little bit because my first, no, because my first thing is I don't want to go back to prison. You know what I mean? And then it's like what you just said. I'm like, oh yeah, because like I don't want the repercussions of like having known that I've hurt someone's feelings. Like, well, yeah, that too. But that's not my first.
If that's where we differ,
because it's kind of, I don't know. That's just how my brain works. But you always help me. You and Diane, Alexa too, to some degree, but certainly you and Diane really help me remember other people's feelings and emotion. And people might find that shocking about me because I am such a big proponent of justice and righting wrongs, and I love people deeply, but I often forget or disconnect. And I don't know if that's from my trauma or my mental health issues, that I disconnect from the outcomes of other people's emotions to my behavior. And I really believe it's because, and I don't know, you might agree with this or not, but when I fully am in touch with what I've done to hurt someone, Mandi, the sense of pain, and it's not shame. And we talked about the other night on the phone. It's not that. It's a true pain and remorse of having known that I've hurt someone. I feel like I'm going to die under that. So it's easier to just shut off completely from the idea of other people's emotions. And of course, prison certainly didn't help that. As a coping skill.
It probably tweaked it to make it perfected.
Like, nobody, if I don't look out for myself, nobody else will, because you can't trust people, and people mean you know well, and their intentions are all bad. And when I explain that to people, they're like, well, you're using your history as an excuse for bad behavior. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to explain to you why, as a 15-year-old growing up in this system, my brain works the way it does now, and I work every day hard to be a healthy whole person.
I do want to touch on what you just said, how it's like, don't use your history as like an excuse. I think there's a difference when someone shares their story to help you understand why they are the way they are, as far as understanding like their flaws or their imperfections, as far as like trying to be better. Like, yeah, we all slip up. Yeah, we all make mistakes. But if you use your story as an excuse to just be bad or just to be the way you want to be because of your story, like, no, that is an excuse.
Right. Like, that's just the way I am. Oh, well, that's just the way I am.
That's in prison. I would, oh my God. Yeah, I heard a lot of people would talk to me all the time. I heard so many stories and I would fall for them all the time. Like, I would just be like, oh my God, that's so sad. Like, or, like, oh my God, that really happened. Or, like I really invested, and I really like would try to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm. Well, and prison is a scary place to do that, right? And
is it? Like, I don't know. Like, mentally, when I got there, I was just like, what? Why do we have to be mean to each other? Like, later, I was like, nah, fuck all y'all. Like, oh, I cussed. I'm sorry.
No, honey, this is fine. I use profanity like it's just common grammar.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, when I first got locked up, I didn't understand why people like, one of the first things the first time when I first got locked up, my first unit, Lane Murray, I got checked by this girl that had a girlfriend.
Okay.
I got checked because I didn't even know what that fucking meant. Because I smile too much. They're like, why do you smile so much? Like, why are you doing that? Who are you trying? Like, I'm sorry, I just smile all the time. Like, that's just what I do. Even the guards, they'd be like, why are you smiling? I was like, I don't know. Maybe it's part of my mental. Like, I don't know. I
Right,
just,
because it's just it's such a backwards culture. And like you said, there are people on the inside. As much as we like, I try to tell about the women that we left behind. I have a heart for them. They're like family, and I know their struggles, and they are me, they are you, they are Diane. But I also know how some of them don't have that introspection, and they are people to be weary of. It
yeah, they're
does not
predators.
mean it
They're
does
predators,
not
and that's a
mean
real thing.
that is a real thing. And I try to
In my naive,
uh,
smiley ass.
right, but even those that did not uh, have good intentions to be better people, that were so lost in their trauma and their sickness and their story, it doesn't mean that they don't deserve dignity and respect from the system as a human being. Like, I just want to make
Yes.
that clear. I don't
I
want
really, well,
people.
no, like I really think they are the way they are because that's how they survive in there. Like the status, if you can get honestly, and I don't know if this is allowed to be shared, but if you can get an officer to accept your story, believe your story, and you can act crazy and get away with it, you got it made in prison. Like your sad story, like not necessarily the real story, because we
Mhm.
don't always know the real story. But if you can make them, if because like that one guy, yeah, one girl
Yeah.
could finesse, talk to, be, charismatic, fun, just like childlike because they've been locked up for 20, 30 years. They brought fun. They were, you know what I mean? Like, and if a guard can look at that and be like, oh, like you've been locked up for 15, 20 years, like, okay. And then they would, whatever. And then you have those ones that go totally psych that throw poop on the wall and pee everywhere and get away with whatever because of their mental or is it, I don't even know. Like it's
Well,
so
it's you make a very interesting point as we're talking about coping skills, right? Is that there are some people that even use uh, whatever story they have, not in a way to help explain um, where they are on their journey, but to use that as a coping skill, right? Because that particular person you're talking about, that's how she survived. It was a survival
yeah.
skill. It's a
No, for sure.
coping
It was
skill.
it was part of her game. Like it literally like and I still till this day and I still feel bad for her because that Peter Pan like how they just like it's like they're stuck mentally. Like it's like I don't even know if they would know better or if that is the way they survive. But it works. And that's how the system is set up to work. It's not there to it's not set up for you to actually grow as a person. Cuz certain people they don't even have access to school. They don't even have access to curriculum. Like the ones that are their 50 years sentences or 30-year sentences, like they're not even allowed to better themselves. Like if they're 15 and they get sentenced to 30 years, they're not going to be able to go to school for 15, 20 years. So you know who's raising them? You know who's teaching a 15-year-old how to be an adult? A guard who don't care and 30 other inmates or 112 that are just teaching them to survive because if they smile, they're going to get checked. You know what I mean? Like there is no type of set up system to help people actually grow.
I want to highlight a comment on that note. Katie says, we're so used to turning off our emotions for so long that sometimes it's difficult to find a good balance. People could be who or whatever they portrayed to be to escape the reality of being in there. So, and it's like you said, like that's a coping skill in itself. And, I am so grateful for the patience and the love and support that the people in my life give me. And my brother has told me once, he said, You're one of the people that I admire most. And he may argue in the comments and say, I never said that. I don't know what you're talking about. But he said something along those lines of like, I think it was, you're one of the strongest people I know. He said, because of the things that you've gone through and you are where you are in life with your work and your career and having, twice fallen on your ass and being able to get up. And I was so stunned when he said that because I typically don't see myself as a strong person, but when he said that, I looked back, Mandy, on everything I've been through, just not as my childhood, but the stuff I suffered at the Texas Youth Commission. I was talking to a group today about those conditions and that abuse and the stuff in prison and the psychological terror and everything we've been through on the outside. And it's like, good Lord, I'm surprised I function as well as I do. So again, not as an excuse for bad behavior or reactions, but damn, I've come a long way for everything that I've endured and survived. And I'm proud of you. I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of Diane and Alexa and all of our friends, Michelle.
But you know what I think it is it's not so much that we don't accept our story. Like, I don't know about, I can't speak for you because you just had that reality moment where you did go back and like replay. And there are times where I can do that. And if I were to do that, I would be so depressed. Like, I've done it. I used to do it all the time in prison, but I literally, when I say grieve the life you have had, like, you literally have, like, I literally had to go through the process of like grieving that, because when I think of, like, I'm telling you, like, I try not to even think about some of the things that I've had to endure. And not because I don't own it. Like, sometimes people will tell me things about myself and I'm just like, oh, I did that. Like, oh, like, I forgot. I can't believe you remember that. I'm stupid. But at the same time, I'm just like, but I survived it, Like, I survived it. Like, I survived all of that. And I appreciate when people can look at me and be like, you know what? I'm proud of you. Like, I'm proud of you. You're so strong. In my mind, I'm like, I'm actually really tired and I'm actually really weak, but thank you. Because on the inside, I'm so broken. And on the inside, I'm so like still dealing and still coping and still processing. But I appreciate that you see that I'm strong, and I just hope that that gives other people hope. But I just don't, I don't really like to think about everything I've been through and then have people be like, oh my God, you're so strong. I can't believe you did that. Because in my head, I'm like, or like, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. And in my head, I'm like, well, it's my story and it happened. And I really don't even care if you believe it or not, because I don't want to have to think about it. So let's just, let's just move on. That could be part of my trauma. I don't know, maybe.
A little bit of dissociation with it.
Like, I appreciate it. Like, it makes me feel like it makes me happy that people actually acknowledge the fact that it does take strength to endure and to come up and to rise up and to, continue to do better. Like, it takes strength and it takes determination and it takes discipline, like it really does, because,
but you make a good point in terms of, I am strong and I'm glad that people see that. But it doesn't negate. And this is, when I tell people it is a struggle it may not look like it. And Lord knows I have come through a lot, and I do appear much stronger at times than I probably really am, because it's a struggle. It is a intentional thing that I do every day to hold on to my mental health and my spiritual growth and everything that I've accomplished. So it's not like we discovered these things about ourselves and we're on the path of healing, and every day's, it's not easy. It really is that a struggle, at least for me, every day.
Well, anyone who's on the path of healing or been on the path of healing, if you're healed, lucky you, like it's always a struggle. And I think healing is kind of like a constant, like, you constantly it's like wounds get reopened or things will happen that will trigger you. And like, you constantly have to deal with that. And yeah, like, we can present ourselves strong and capable, which we are, but people don't understand that, like, even though we appear to be strong and capable, we still have our trauma. Like, we still have that, like, I guess the best way to say it is that our ability to process, disassociate, or to cope has to have grown so much that we can like still hold it together.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes. It makes perfect sense.
It probably makes sense to you because you and I,
because we're just
everybody else is lost, but that's
girl. Fine. Later on, I might get some comments to say, I have no idea what you and Mandy were talking about. No.
Yeah. It was a great conversation. They're not going to know what we're talking about.
I was just going to put another comment up here from Katie. She said, we might not think we we're
Ooh.
strong, but surviving out of necessity. It takes a ton of strength to overcome the mental and emotional and other hurts. And she's absolutely,
That is
absolutely
actually
right.
well said. I actually love
Let's
that
let's
because
put it up again.
I really love how she said, but surviving out of necessity. Cause like sometimes people are like, oh, are you content? Are you happy? Like even when we were in there, if we had a good moment with our friend and we got on the phone and we're laughing, they're like, are you happy in there? Like, no, I'm surviving in here. You know, like
Right.
I'm just trying to make the best out of the day that I had. You know what I mean? Or something like that.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of the way that we learned to cope and dealt with things in there was out of survival. Like it was straight out of survival. Even out here, it's just we do things to survive. We just don't have to have the same, we have the option to make better choices in how we survive. And there we didn't have the option to make better choices in how we survived. We just had to survive.
Yeah.
And out here, it's like, okay, you know how to survive. Now it's your choice on how you want to survive. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Mm-hmm. And it's something that Maggie says a lot. You know, she says, how we are in survival mode from the moment. I mean, everybody's trying to survive, but in terms of when you are incarcerated, you are in survival mode, period. Period. No, you have a good day, bad day. You are in survival mode and you do it well some days and some days you don't. But like you said, it's like, you know, I remember one time my ex-girlfriend, she came to the
Which
jail.
one?
Big and bitter. Uh, let's sort through the bag of them. No,
I know exactly.
no, she was a very good friend later on. But she came to see me at the jail. And oh, girl, I was a hot mess. Every time she came, we had a video visitation, and I would just, all she could see was the top of my head. I would just cry and cry. And she'd be like, Jennifer, she said, did you get the money that I put on your books? I was like, yeah. She said, well, you know, you like M&Ms, so why don't you buy a bunch of M&Ms and just enjoy them with some peanut butter? And I said, I wanted nothing because I wouldn't give myself permission to enjoy anything. And I remember just crying. And she said, look at me. I want you to lift your head up and look at me. She said, Jennifer, whether you cry and get upset and you're sad and you're burning inside and you're just refusing to accept reality, or whether you're sitting on that bunk eating 45 packages of M&Ms with peanut butter and reading a book or watching some cheesy movie or laughing with your little friend, your cellmate, she goes, either way, that door is not going to open. It's not going to open. So why in the world would you choose to cope with it like this? And I was like, from that moment on, things were different. I was like, damn, she's right. I can
No,
sit
but
here
for
and be
real.
upset all I want to, and it's not going to change the situation. The only way the situation is going to change is if I do things differently in the future. And that includes this next decision of doing the best I can with what I've got.
And that kind of goes back to like counting the cost.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's exactly how I feel. Like I've chosen, and I think we had this conversation the other day where I'm like, look, I'm going to be happy. Like I might have bad days. I might have days where I cry or I'm sad or I'm depressed about something, but I'm going to get over it. Like, I don't know about these people who just want to be sad and depressed all the time. Like, no, like choose to be happy. And if they're like, it's not a choice, I just a feeling, okay, well, do something, go stimulate yourself and smile.
Right.
And when I say stimulate, I just meant like exercise or whatever.
Right. Okay. I just tease you. Let's see. We've got a comment here from Shara L. Hey Jennifer, great stream. I think this is a great conversation, by the way. Thank you, Mandi. I'm so glad you joined me tonight. I've been a big fan of yours since reading your column in the Echo. I'd really like to connect with you. So I'm very interested in mental health advocacy and prison reform. Well, definitely we can do that. Thank you for your comment, and thank you everybody for being here. Miss Jerry's been blowing it up in the comment section, really sharing some stuff.
I wish I could see him. I'm kind of sad about that. Hi,
Yeah,
everybody. I don't even know who's here.
I don't know. I don't know how to share the comment feed with you right now, but you
It's
can
okay.
definitely
We'll
go back
get
and
it
see
later.
it on our stream. So we got about 5 minutes left. And is there anything else that you would like to share? We've had a good audience. Kept a strong number of people here. You're a hit, Mandy. I knew you would be.
Great. I'm here every. No, I'm just kidding. Just tell me where to. I'll tell you where to send the check.
Right.
Just kidding. I just want to say, like, I think this is something that when it comes in, because I know that you're trying to essence this whole topic around coping skills. And I think that one of the biggest things when it comes to coping and stressors is that you have to understand people are not going to understand how you feel. And trying to get them to understand is not going to help you cope. Like, you literally have to go into yourself, figure out how you feel, accept those feelings, address those feelings, and then process through them. And when I say process through, I guess in other people, they might say let it go, but I'm probably not going to really let it go. I'm going to make sure that it made a lot of sense. And I'm going to make sure that it's just like, you know what I mean? I'm going to have to like process why, when, how, who, what, and just like, okay, I can't accept it, you know?
Right.
And so it's like that whole process of like, I guess it's the process of acceptance is kind of how coping works. Because even when you're coping with grief, at the end, this last stage is acceptance. And how whatever you have to do or whatever you have to tell yourself or whatever, you know, healthy measures you can take to help you get to the acceptance stage, that's what you need to do to cope.
Brilliantly said. I totally agree. Not always easy when I like things my way. But
Jennifer, but we're both brats. So like, I'm just like, yeah, you're right. I get it.
Usually think I'm right. And I like things to be my way, but who doesn't, right? At least I can admit it.
I think everyone likes to get their way. I think something that you would need to work on.
Where's the mute button?
Is just learning to accept. Like we all want to be accepted for who we are. Right? Like we all, like, I'm one of those people. This is one of my mottos. I love when people love me despite myself. Like, love me despite myself because I'm going to love you despite yourself. Like, don't abuse me. Don't use me. Don't, you know, like I've tried that before, but like, but you know what I mean? Like, we're so quick to want to be accepted and loved, but we're not as quick to accept and just love because of our trauma.
Right.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
And by us, I'm really, you know, just letting you know.
I'm not alone. So me and Mandy are going to prom together. Can I tell that to everybody or should I have not shared that?
Gang. I don't care. We should all go.
So
party bus.
I never got to go to my prom because I was in prison. But I did go with that same ex-girlfriend who ended up being a very good friend. We went to the premiere of Prom Night back in 2008, 2009. We went to Hollywood and we went to Los Angeles. And that was very much like a prom, the after party was.
What the hell? I want to go there. Why do I have to settle for just a prom? I want to go to LA.
Yeah, we went to the movie screening and then we went to the after party and met the actresses and the actors and stuff. And true to form, she got mad at me the rest of the evening and didn't talk to me.
See, and that's one thing, like, I don't understand, and I don't know if that's like normal, but I don't understand why people just don't want to be happy together. Like, even in prison, like, I never understood why people wanted to just be constantly fighting with their significant other. Like, why? Like, if you're going to make me fight with you all the time, then why are we even doing this?
Maybe that's their love language, honey.
Or maybe that's their, like, toxic cycle that they need to go deal with. How to love.
That's a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
But so me and Mandy are going to prom and it'll be fun. It'll be exciting. And as I close it out, because we've got a minute or two.
Oh, we're going to go out this weekend too. You want to tell them about that?
That's
because her birthday was on Monday. I hope everybody was able to tell her happy birthday. We're not going to say any age, you know, she lost some time. So, you know, she's been preserved.
That's right. I've been pickled emotionally. And
still in her prime.
Yeah, we're gonna celebrate my birthday this weekend. It should be some good shenanigans and hijinks. Yes.
Speaking of which, I need to call you and talk to you about that because, yeah.
You have some ideas?
Well, something came up and I think you're going to like it. Let's just say it has to do with tacos.
Okay. I'm not sure which tacos, but
As
either
long
way.
as you know, that's so funny because I said it because it really does have to do with tacos. But I love that that's where you went because I was like, this could be a play on words.
Honey, I already know. Already know.
You're just
So,
kidding.
you're my friend and you love me how I am. So please
Love you.
don't talk shit about this last question, but you've watched my videos, so you know I'm gonna
Wait,
ask you.
is it a Taylor Swift question?
Yes.
Oh my God. Hold on. You're about to get so mad at
Sorry.
me. I should have
No,
been
come on, man.
prepared.
Just come feel it.
Oh, no.
Okay.
My favorite.
All right, you
Shake
ready?
it off.
Oh my God. So you're gonna use Shake It Off? Everybody uses Shake It Off. It's
But
the only
it's
one they
because
can.
it's so good. Like it's like shake. Like I mean, it's like a beat.
It's
It makes
true.
you
You
feel
know
good.
what? You're
Huh?
right. It kind of goes hand in hand with what we were talking about. Just
Yeah,
shake
like
it
it
off.
literally is just like, and you know what? That's a good coping skill.
Hey, interesting fact. When I would get up every morning, which mornings and weekends were the hardest for me, but like during the week when I'd have to get up was the hardest time for me, like to meditate and pray and just not be angry and depressed and just face the day and enjoy the day. Every morning since the moment that song came out, I would get up, walk to the education building, drop my mail off, and sing Shake It Off.
But for real, like, and it's one of those ones that come in the car and you're just like, bet, like you just like, and you feel it.
You feel it.
I appreciate Taylor Swift for that song.
Oh,
Oh, and
for
then
that
that Our
song.
Story song too. That was so cute. I
That
think
was
that's
a
what it's
good one.
called, right?
Yeah.
That was so cute. Actually, I like a lot of her songs now that I'm thinking about it.
Well, get ready because that's all you're going to listen to this
Oh,
weekend.
I was like, are we going to a Taylor Swift concert?
That's
Yeah,
at some point in the future. Yes,
that was,
I may have to
I was
sell my
prematurely
ass to
really
get
excited.
tickets, but
Hey,
good
you're in
tickets.
your prime.
I'm in my prime.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll let you go for the evening, and thank you everybody for joining us. We had a nice audience and some great comments. Y'all go back through the video and make comments and tell us your thoughts about your coping skills. And until next week, y'all stay out of trouble, and I'll see you then.
Bye. I don't know what to do.